I'm Gemma Sampson. I'm an advanced sports dietitian, and today I am chatting with Steve Cummings about his experience with nutrition over his really diverse career. So thanks for joining me, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we worked together a couple of years ago at Dimension Data, and yeah, I mean, you have literally raced for like almost 20 years, and did you find that things changed nutrition wise for recommendations or what you were doing over that?
Yes, I remember. So I raced professionally for 15 years. My first team was in Belgium, and I remember, yeah, if you were to take that first team and the nutrition there to what it was 15 years later was completely different. I mean, part of that was because like the budget of the team is a very small team, so you're talking like low level, and then you go to a higher level, and it was the opposite end of the spectrum, so that did affect it as well. But I used to take my own like science and sport products, and they were still, since then they've developed so much more stuff. So then I was just like, some of these lads thought I was crazy. What's that powder stuff? It was like a recovery drink.
Yeah.
And couldn't get their head around it, and I'd take my own race food and stuff like that. And I think British cycling was ahead of the curve anyway, maybe with all that stuff, certainly in like if you think about European traditional teams. And then by the time I stopped, I couldn't keep up with all the new products and stuff coming out, and yeah, it changed massively over the 15 years, I guess.
So you always, like, basically from the start, you were quite proactive with making sure that you took things for yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what I used to do. I used to take ownership of everything, really. And nutrition was such a huge part. I realized, like, being a track rider, it wasn't always, you're not so concerned with being super skinny. It was more like being powerful and fast, explosive, and all that kind of stuff. So when I went onto the road, which was like my passion, I wouldn't say I was obsessed, but I was very, yeah, just looking to learn about, trying to get leaner, trying to get stronger, trying to recover faster. And yeah, for sure, I made some huge mistakes along the way,
Yeah.
because a lot of it, I worked with several nutritionists along the way, and at times I felt like I was a guinea pig. And yeah, I'm sure I was, really, when you look back. But yeah, learning about myself.
So what sort of mistakes did you make?
A lot. I think initially, when you're young, you're not patient, and you see these senior pros and these guys in the Tour de France, and they're all ripped up and they haven't got an ounce of fat on them. And you think, oh, I need to look like that. But it just takes time, and it's not realistic to think you can do that in 6 weeks. So I think the initial mistakes, and I don't know, but I think maybe when you're younger, there is a tendency to be impatient and try and rush things.
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes when you get yourself in a mess, because you maybe cut too much, and then there's always kind of like a rebound effect to that you with me, I'd often cut too much, and then you end up going to a race, you eat like normal because you have to, and you end up sort of like blowing up a bit, swelling up, storing stuff. So yeah, it was hard to find that balance. It took me quite a long time, to be honest, to find that balance.
Yeah. And I suppose for everyone, it's just that slightly different as well.
Yeah, I think you talk about body types as well, and I'm not one of these guys who's naturally skinny. It was like really quite hard work to get there. The guys you see they can just seem to be able to eat what they want, and they're skinny. And for me, it was like really hard work and I had to be pretty, I'd say strict, but it becomes like a lifestyle. And I don't know if strict's the right word. It's more like structured. So I think there's a time and a place for everything. It's just, I think that was probably one of the key things I learned, like about timings and stuff like that. So to enjoy food at the right time, and then be a bit stricter when it wasn't the right time.
That's it. Like, I suppose there's periods where like it might be sort of race weight and you want to be leaner for a key race, but then to be that all year round isn't necessarily sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. It's a balance of what is sustainable, like for your morale, your family's morale as well, because there's no good being grouchy. That affects your family.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of figuring out what was a sustainable weight for me, and then like uh, I could hover around that weight pretty comfortably all year. Really, I didn't really towards the end of my career. Well, I never really had big shifts of weight. I never really
Mm.
like some of the guys jump up 8 kilos in the winter, and I didn't. My strategy was different. I'd kind of always hover. I'd never probably be 3 or 4 kilos heavier than race weight, but the last kilo was always the hardest, and that was like I'd do that probably like 4 weeks before a big race over time.
Yeah. So that's where you talk about the patience, where not just be like, oh, I'm going to lose this next week. Like I've got to plan this and ensure that I can make changes, like you say, in a way that you can sustain and still be happy and with nice to your family.
Yeah, no, I think initially, like for me, come from a working class family, and I know we used to fed chips a lot when you're a kid, and fish fingers and all that kind of stuff, and it's not, and that's what's like normal, and that's maybe not healthy. So it's quite a big shift from eating like that to like the diet of a world tour cyclist, like the optimal diet of a world tour cyclist. So that took time, and when I got there eventually, now I just eat like that. And it's not really a chore, and I've retired, and I enjoy treats more because I don't have to stress.
Mm.
But I haven't really gained masses of weight. I think I've gained 5 kilos, but it's probably like healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So,
that was one of the things I was going to ask you about, like how has your food and nutrition changed? Obviously less stress and pressure to be a specific weight, but yeah, how has that sort of changed in terms of the foods that you're eating and the timing?
um, yeah, I always found, to be honest, nutrition for me was when I moved to Italy, and I found it much easier then. I think it's, if you live in and around, if you're in Europe and you live in and around the Med, that I don't know, for some reason the food just tastes better. I think because it's locally produced, you're by the sea, it's good meat, is good vegetables, it never travels very far. And I don't know, like in the UK, it was always felt like everything's, well, it probably because it is, a few days old, and it doesn't have the same taste. So that I just found it easier to eat better around Italy. And then, so since I retired, we've moved back to the UK, and yeah, I don't know, it is a bit more challenging, but I still eat as if I was in Italy, and um, eat that kind of style, that Mediterranean way.
Mm. Well, that's good. And I think that's one of the things I'm often talking with people is that to eat well and the food that you're eating when you're racing should be something that you could maintain for life. And the quantities and the volume might change a bit, and it might be slightly more than the rest of your family who aren't training. But that's great that you've been then be able to sort of keep applying that once you're not racing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to habits as well. I think it's just a habit, and I think one of the things was when I stopped, I always had this feeling of guilt. If you ate something that wasn't optimal, I always felt guilty, and that's kind of gone now. And but also because you've been cutting those, like, I don't know, treats, if you like, you've cut them out for so many years. I don't know, you maybe go through a phase where you eat them a lot, and then you're just like, okay, so what? And then
Yeah.
kind of revert back and then you find like a happy medium where, yeah, just a bit more relaxed about what I have. I remember, like, when I was a rider, I used to always take my own food when I traveled if I could, just for that control. So I had control over what I was getting, because if you go to the airport, you don't always have control. um and often you travel a lot as a professional bike racer, so I think those days can really add up over the year if you've got control of what you're eating. That
For
was
sure.
something as well I learned as well, actually.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Like it's that whole like planning ahead, and because yeah, you might be like, oh, I'm going to like get this sandwich or salad or whatever at the airport. But then what if your flight gets changed or the shop is shut or something's changed? It's just ensuring that you're then fueling your body in a way that you know the food's good for you, you know it's going to taste good, and it's available when you're going to need it too. And like you say, it's different if you're traveling once every 3 months, but if you're traveling like 3-4 times a week, which might happen if you're racing.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's just about being organised and trying to put things in your case that can last, and you've always got something in your bag.
Mm.
If you were hungry, that's I don't know if I was obsessive, but that's what I did. That's what I did.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be alone with it. I think a lot of athletes probably would do that as well, just to give you that reassurance and, they say, that control, that you know that you're going to have something when you need it that's going to be the best for you.
Yeah, because I honestly, because I had to be kind of pretty strict, pretty rigid to what I ate. So if I did eat something full of sugar, for example, or something like really high in carb, you could see it in my body weight the next day. It just sit on you, and sometimes that's good because you want that extra fuel. But if it goes too much, then I used to get this feeling of like being heavy legged and blocked, and that was horrible. I hated that. It used to take me a few days to get rid of all that excess sort of fluid and fuel.
Yeah. And what about like now, like do you ride much now, or like you're still riding now that you've retired?
My plan was to ride half, but normal life takes over, and with I think if things were normal, like because my daughter's not at school, she's home with us. I ride maybe an hour a day because I just don't have time to do any more, and then I try to get out like once or twice for 3 hours plus, really. But um, I think you just priorities change. So I have to, instead of going on the bike at the moment, I'll go take her for a walk because she needs to go out as well. So it's just, yeah, I think if she was at school, I'd ride twice, 3-4 hours, and then like an hour. So in total, 5 rides a week probably would be the ideal for me. Also for my mind, otherwise I go crazy.
Yeah, it's a good way to release extra energy. Do you do, like, I suppose it's going to depend on the weather, but are you doing more indoors at the moment than outdoors?
It's all been, yeah, the majority of it has been indoors, even though I love to ride out. I'd rather ride outside any day. It's in the UK, it's a bit of, sometimes it's a bit of a clean-up operation. So you might ride your bike for an hour, but you just completely soak them and your bike's dirty. And
Yeah, it's like, do I really want to spend an hour cleaning my bike after this?
all that time getting changed. So it's all about like time and yeah, if so twice a week I would go out on the road for sure if the weather's okay, but I don't take any risks either. So it's been really cold, so if it's less than like 3 degrees I won't ride outside really because I don't want to fall off on ice.
That was me when I lived in the UK. Like the slightest chance of ice, I'm like, no, I'm not out there. I'm like, I just seen too many mates that I rode with, just like, they're like, yeah, it'll be fine, like down and breaking things, whether it was themselves or their bikes. I'm like, I don't get paid to ride. No.
No, it's not cool. Yeah, so over the winter it's just out of ease, and we're very fortunate that we got Zwift now, and it's kind of cool because it keeps you, I don't know, there's always a challenge on there, like Tour de Swift or something like that, or a little race, and yeah, I enjoy doing that as well.
Yeah, that's good motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's
And
cool. Do you eat much, or do you eat foods or drinks or gels or anything during those rides, or what do you do now that you're sort of not racing food wise?
so yeah, so if I was, so in the summer when I stopped, so last year in the summer when the weather was good and I had a bit more time and you start to get out a bit more consistently, then I would start to eat more properly, because if you don't, you don't enjoy it, and you can't maximize your training. But at the moment, because I'm not riding that much, I don't really eat anything on the bike, to be honest. Sometimes like if you do 3 hours, it's nice to have a little stop. But again, like with this COVID, it's hard. We can get a takeaway coffee somewhere, so we kind of do that. But I tend not to eat. I do put something in my pocket just for emergency, but I don't really need it, really.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing is you've also got like those years of experience where you're much more efficient at using your stores than maybe the average person who would need to fuel a bit more regularly.
Yeah, I think so. I still, when I was a rider, I kind of fasted I took it to the extremes probably, and I still like to do that now. Like, so when I feel like I don't need breakfast, I won't have it, and I'll wait till lunchtime, and so maybe I'll go for a walk, or maybe I'll go on the bike. Um, I don't know. I quite like that.
Yeah.
You probably agree, but
well, no, it's all about that. It all just depends on the training that you're doing. Like you say, if you're doing sort of more longer, steady rides, then that's it. You don't necessarily need the fuel in that context. If you're going and doing like sprint sessions and you're trying to do it faster, that's when you probably start to come unstuck.
yeah. I tended, when I was a rider, I'd fast maybe once, maybe twice a week. It depends. Once, and it would normally be after a rest day. So it was almost saying up before about sort of, if I wasn't using the fuel, it sat on me. So after a rest day, I'd always be a bit heavier, and it was kind of logical, and it felt right to do it on that day.
Yeah.
Day after the first day of a 2 or 3 day block.
So you said about like obviously the whole COVID scenario and situation that we're in these days makes things a bit different. But you're talking about like a coffee stop. Did you used to do coffee cafe rides when you were racing, or is that sort of a thing that sort of just happened now that you're not racing?
No, there's a funny guy, on the bike. I saw his work, and as I got older, it became more and more just like really workmanlike. And I mean, I still enjoyed it, and I'd stop. The thing I trained generally. I train alone, and yeah, no, coffee ride was a day off for me. Was a day in the bed really, or a day out the bike. That was a day off.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when I started doing that, I felt a benefit. But I think like if you haven't got a family and you live away from home, and it's there's nothing better than wasting a few hours with your mates going for a coffee stop. Yeah, totally
Yeah.
get that. Yeah.
It all comes down to prioritize your lifestyle, what's sort of going on at home. That I think that often has a huge influence on people. I think maybe underestimate the influence of, like, yes, say your social life, your work situation, and how that influences your training capacity and your nutrition sort of intake too.
Yeah, I think ultimately you got to have fun, haven't you? If you you got to enjoy what you do, and that's nutrition. You can't be hungry. You can be hungry for a period, but not forever, because it's not fun. And the same, if you enjoy with your riding 30 minutes, is that detrimental to your cycling season? I don't think so. So you just go for a coffee stop with your mate. But for me, I just wanted to get home. Like I said, I had family and stuff like that, and I like to be away from the bike sometimes. Just it made me more hungry when I was on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And do you have any final like words of wisdom for like when it comes to like, well, training or nutrition wise for riders these days, based on your experience?
Um, I'd just say try and be consistent, and keep learning, because I think that's what it is. I don't think there's one sort of solution or one method that fits everyone. It's kind of finding what works best for you, and using the knowledge of people like yourself who've done all that academics and theory work, and they understand all the science behind it. Like, really use those people, and just try and work with someone like that, and just apply those ideas, and try and learn about yourself and what works best for you.
Yeah, good advice. No, I can't agree more, because that's it. Like, what works for you isn't going to work for me, and vice versa.
Yeah, because you're all different, right? We all got different levels of sort of tolerance when it comes to everything. Yeah, and all different body types as well. So be consistent, I would say.
Good advice. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Always, thank you.